Hey, Ron here. Just wanted to talk a little bit about home labs. I think they're important. I like emulators, I really do. However, there's a lot of things you can't do with an emulator, and there's nothing like the experience of getting actual hands-on equipment. You can't really simulate a cable going bad, or if you make a Cat5 cable and bad pinout or something like that, or cable comes unplugged, or all these little nuances that go along with physical equipment. You can't simulate that in a emulator, but that's valuable experience that you gain. It's a pain in the butt sometimes, but again, it's experience, and it's worth it, and you're going to see it in the real world. So whenever I can, I get hands-on equipment. So the picture I got in front of you is my small kit that I got at the house. So we got three 2600 routers, 3 switches, and some other little pieces here and there that basically make up my 12U rack of CCNA level equipment. So the 2600s I like, as opposed to the 2500s. There to the left, you can't really tell, but those, I have a couple 2500s that are sitting on the floor there that I've bought along the way, bought as a part of a package or something along that. 2500s are cool. You can do CCNA level stuff on it, but I like the flexibility of the 2600, that you can add modules to it. You can you just have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more power, but you're not stretching the buck so far that it just makes it not worth purchasing. You can still get a decent 2600 between $50 and $100 nowadays, and they're all over eBay. So enough about that. The 2600s I do have, I've got them loaded up with different modules that I've acquired along the way, whether I get them from a buddy or I borrow them from work or I find them on eBay. You name it. There's WIC 1Ts, there's WIC 2Ts, there's just some 56K serial. I think I got a T1 card in there. Not everything you need, but I got enough pieces in there that I can simulate most things. Okay, so if you look, these are my 2600s. These are my switches. There's a 1720 right here. Picked this up a while back with a couple of other routers at the time. I didn't think I would use it, but I actually have used it in a couple labs for frame relay. I use it as a frame relay switch. And I just do some DELC mapping in there. So when I have this DELC on this port here that's trying to get to its distant end, well, this DELC or this acts as my frame relay switch and maps it over to the next guy, so that I can also terminate it there. And it works pretty good doing that. I haven't done much else with it. Couple of little pieces that I've used, a USB hub, and I'll talk about that here in a second. I've got a Cisco firewall that I'm not using right now. I bought it and the guy sent it with the wrong power supply. Go figure. Trip Light, just my power distro. I've got a computer here. Obviously you can tell it's pretty old. It's like a P4 with barely any real stats, but it's good enough to run Linux server. I'm not a big Linux guy, but I can get my way around, and I use this to simulate. If I want to run this as my DHCP server instead of the router, I can do that. If I want to set this up as an FTP server, I can do that. There's a number of other things that I'm still playing around with it, but not needed for just general CCNA level stuff. General CCNA, you can do everything here. And then I got extra spare parts of this and that I've acquired along the way that I'm probably going to get rid of. The 2600, like I said, I'm a big fan of it. It's cheap, but also you can upgrade the flash, and you can upgrade the RAM, which I've done in some of my routers, so that I can fit a larger iOS image on it, a more advanced iOS. When I bought them, they originally came with like an IP base, which doesn't have a whole lot of functionality. It's good enough for most of the CCNA level stuff, but I like to play around, and get into other things. So being able to load a heavier iOS was a pretty big deal to me, and so I had to upgrade the flash and I had to upgrade the RAM. I know on some of the 2600s you might have to upgrade. I can't remember the term for it, whether it's the ROM or the it's basically the BIOS or whatever you want to call it of the router. Runs the boot images, this and that. Sometimes they don't support, you know, so much flash or so much RAM, and Cisco recommends that you upgrade them. I didn't have to do that in my case. I bought 2620s XMs, which was pretty advanced as far as the 2600s go, and it did everything I need. I have two 2610s that were just good enough to be able to upgrade them to the point where I could load a better iOS. And again, these are basically, they look like RAM chips that you would see in your computer, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I just had to go on the Cisco website or, you know, some other third-party website, make sure I was buying the right chip, and found them on eBay pretty cheap. You know, we're talking like 10-15 bucks. This is a 2500 that I was talking about before. The reason, you know, I'm not a big fan of it is because, one, expandability. You don't see any additions, any modules that you can put in this. What you have is two serial ports in this case and two AUI ports, and the AUI ports needed additional connector, like an AUI connector, and it would come out to a RJ45 plug, which gave you like an Ethernet port. Pretty lame, but at the time, I guess that was cool. In my lab, again, I run with 2600s. I try to avoid the 2500 if I can. What else we got here? Let me go to the next image. This is 2600, a little closer up. So these are where you can plug your modules in. Okay, so you get a little bit of expandability, choice between what ports you want on this thing. One of the cards I added was a 16 ESW card, which gave me 16 fast Ethernet ports. In this case, this probably isn't the exact module I used. Mine does not support PoE. Mine does not support layer 3 switching, which is fine for me. You know, that's part of the reason I got them, is because where I was working at, they were getting rid of the layer 2 switch port modules and going with layer 3s. So I dug them out of the trash, so it didn't cost me anything. But you can still find them pretty cheap online. It gave me fast Ethernet ports. So the 2610s that I have, they only have an Ethernet port. And what you'll find, and I didn't know it at the time, but an Ethernet port can't do trunking. Go figure. So I went ahead and picked these up out of the trash, and now I can do trunking. My 2620XM came with a fast Ethernet port, so I don't have to worry about that. This is one of the WIC 2T serial cards. So it gives me two ports, two serial ports. I only use this in one of my routers, and the only reason I'm using it is because it came in a router that I bought. I've used these at work in the past when we were still using serial, and the only reason we use them is because they support a higher data rate. Here in my home lab, I could care less. You know, I'm just looking for functionality. This is a WIC 1T card, so this is primarily what I use at the house. They're real cheap online, and the cables for them are real cheap too. So this will support maybe up to 2 megs, and it's pretty easy, like I said, to find, real cheap to purchase, and it's supported pretty much across the board. So I got a couple of these, you know, with my kits, you know, as I bought routers. A lot of them came with these, and I picked up a couple from work as we were getting rid of them. These are the WIC 1T serial cables. The cool thing about these is you'll notice one's labeled D to E, one's DCE. So in your CCNA level courses, you'll find out that on a serial port, one side needs to provide clocking. Okay, in this case, it's the DCE side. In a typical scenario, your telco would be the one providing the clocking. However, in our scenario, we have no telco. We are the telco, so you'll have to make sure the port that DCEN gets plugged into provides clocking. You can also go into the router and look that up. You do a show controllers, and it'll show you on that port if it's a DTE or DCE port, and it does that by sensing what side of the cable is plugged into it. So you'll know also which side's going to need to provide the clocking. This is a serial cable. Okay, so other cables that you're going to need, we discussed the cables for actual data, the WIC 1T, the WIC 2T. This cable is just the console cable. It's just a interface with the router. So the router has a console port, an RJ45 connector. So you use this end on the actual router, and you use this end on your computer. This is a standard 9-pin RS-232 cable. Pretty common. Not so much common anymore. A lot of your newer laptops aren't going to come with the serial port. A lot of your PCs still come with them, but if they're new, they might not. In my case, I have one on my desktop, but I do not have one on my laptop. So I cannot go directly to my computer with this. So instead, I use one of these. This is a RS-232 to USB converter. So it allows me to plug that console cable into my laptop's USB port. Okay, and then I'm a Windows guy, so it'll come up as a COM port. And so whenever I bring up my terminal software, whether that be PuTTY or TerraTerm or something else, or go old school and we got a little hyper terminal, it enables me just to map it to that COM port, and it's just like having it plugged into the back of my computer. Incidentally, if it's plugged into the back of my computer, it's COM1. So one thing I also use is a USB hub. So what this allows me to do is I plug the majority of my console connections into that USB hub, plug that USB hub into my computer, and bam, now I've got multiple COM ports mapped, and I can choose them on my computer, and I'm good to go. I can talk to multiple devices without having to ever unplug and replug back in. Pretty cool. Not that big of a deal. And being that those USB hubs are as cheap as dirt, and extra dongles, the USB to 232 cable is pretty cheap itself. To me it was worth it. So I went ahead and did it. That's pretty much my home lab. Like I said, 3 2600s, 3 layer 2 switches, and then some extra parts here and there, and you can do pretty much the majority of your CCNA labs. Alright, thanks for watching.